Initially, I was going to devote this episode to Sonic the Hedgehog's harmful speed and the amount of force and stress he puts on himself, but then I realized it was already covered by MatPat and the game theorist crew a while back. So instead, I'm going to focus on something even more interesting and even more iconic to the Sonic franchise: loops. For calculating the amount of force Sonic is experiencing as he's traveling along the loop-de-loop, we have to utilize centripetal force. The centripetal force can calculate the force of an object as it travels around a circular path. It is a center-seeking force. The equation for centripetal force is the mass of the object multiplied by the square of its velocity divided by the radius of the circle. The way to find the radius of the circle was to compare the height of Sonic to the height of the loop, and in the case of centripetal force, it is the radius of the loop. On the computer screen where the calculations were done by the measurements of a ruler, it was determined that Sonic's height on the screen appeared as 3 centimeters, while the loop's diameter was around 12 centimeters. We do know from the Sonic the Hedgehog encyclopedia that classic Sonic's height is 3 foot 3 inches, or approximately 91.44 centimeters, because the metric system actually makes sense. Utilizing the height of 91.44 centimeters, as well as the ratios on the computer screen, it was possible to find the height of the loop-de-loop as being 359.76 centimeters in reality. The height being the diameter also meant that we automatically had the radius of the loop as well. The only thing that was missing was the velocity at which Sonic was moving. To get Sonic's velocity for the loop, we first had to calculate the distance traveled. In the case of the movement along a loop or circle, it meant finding the circumference. So by simply plugging in 2 pi r, we were able to find the circumference of the loop to be approximately 11.87 meters. To find the time, it was observed how many seconds it would take Sonic to take 1 revolution along the loop. And due to Sonic being a speed-oriented platformer game, there is a conveniently placed speedometer on the top left-hand corner of the screen that can record the time up to 1/100th of a second. By pausing at just the right times, it was determined that Sonic was able to travel 11.87 meters in just 0.4 seconds. And so, by dividing 11.87 by 0.4 seconds, we are able to get a velocity of 29.675 meters per second. Holy moly, that's fast. Then finally, by putting all the variables for the formula of centripetal force, it is determined that Sonic experiences 16,313.72633 newtons of force. That is a lot. And from the information gained out of websites such as the Discovery Channel, it is determined that the bone that experiences the most amount of stress and force while running is the femur or the thigh bone. Under compressive force, the thigh bone can only take about 4,000 newtons of force, after which it begins to break and or crack. So yeah, that's some bad news. And by the way, all of these measurements are done mainly using pixel measurements, which is basically the process of picking apart every little square pixel that is the building block for a retro game, such as Sonic Mania or Mario 3 or stuff like that. And all of it came from that.
Three, two, one, go!
Sonic will be completely debilitated by the first act of his first game. And that's because of the fact that the loops in Sonic games are almost always perfectly circular. The circle is a perfect and loved study concept, especially in studies such as physics and or mathematics, due to its circular symmetry and perfection in all directions. However, biologically speaking, motion in a perfectly circular loop can be devastating to the human body. Think about it real hard. Out of every roller coaster which you've taken, which one of them actually had perfectly circular loops? None. They were probably all like teardrop-shaped loops, and there's a very specific reason for that. G-force. G-force is expressed as a proportion of the nominal gravitational force experienced when standing on the Earth's surface. The average gravitational pull of the Earth is 9.8 meters per second squared. So in that case, 1 G of force is 9.8 meters per second squared. So 2 G of forces experienced is around 19.6 meters per second squared. And 3 G would be 3 times the force, and so on and so forth. The G forces are due to straight line acceleration. Spinning will produce forces perpendicular to the spin axis. One force is center seeking, while the other is the velocity. When you're moving in a circular loop, your body is moving in a direction tangent to the circle, but almost immediately you're pulled in a perpendicular direction as well. So this constant change of direction and force is what ultimately leads to the harmful effects of G-force. Now, increased G-force during flights or races are very common, and they affect places like the circulatory system quite a lot, because normally blood pressure is highest in the legs and lowest in the head because of just regular gravity, 1 G of force. But when G forces get much stronger, this difference becomes bigger, leading to a lack of blood flow to the brain and causing unconsciousness, which a lot of pilots and fighter pilots call G-induced loss of consciousness, better known as G-lock. Breathing and blood circulation also get messed up with increasing G-forces, causing muscle pain and tiny bruises called petechiae. The worst part is when there's not enough blood flow to the brain, making the vision go dark. G-lock makes people pass out for a short time and then feel confused afterwards. And so to help pilots deal with this problem, they're trained on special breathing and muscle techniques using machines called centrifuge, something that I'm pretty sure and certain that Sonic isn't doing. Now, most of us humans can withstand up to 4 to 6 Gs. This is mostly experienced in the roller coasters we ride. And the fighter pilots, on the other hand, can only manage up to 9 Gs, and that's only for about a second or two before setting off into a state of unconsciousness and most likely death. To calculate how much Gs Sonic, on the other hand, is experiencing as he goes through the loop, we have to divide something known as the centripetal acceleration by the gravity of the Earth, which is 9.8 meters per second squared. Centripetal acceleration is simply obtained by dividing the square of an object's velocity by the radius of the circle, or in this case, the loop. By plugging the speed of 29.67 meters per second and the radius of 1.88928 meters, this would make the centripetal acceleration to be around 466.1 meters per second squared. And finally, dividing it by gravity gives us the final result of, drumroll please, 47.6 Gs of force. Wow, this is how much force that Sonic will be experiencing as he goes through the loop. It is nearly 50 times the force of gravity, felt in just 0.4 seconds. Now, while the exposure time might sound less, and you might think that that would make the G-forces experience not as intense as it would be, no, you're absolutely wrong. It is not that case. Because many car crash deaths are the result of a high amount of G-forces of up to 40 and above for a very short amount of time, such as 0.003 seconds. In the case of the loop, Sonic would experience a lot of different side effects, injuries, and probably, most certainly, death. One of the major things would be internal injuries. The sudden and the intense accelerations could cause internal organs to shift within the body, leading to organ damage or rupture. Blood vessels could burst, causing internal bleeding, while organs like the liver, spleen, or kidneys could be severely affected. Then you had to deal with the whole shabam of bone fractures, because the forces exerted on the skeletal system would cause bones to fracture or break, particularly in areas subjected to the greatest stress, such as the spine, or the limbs, or the neck, or the femur, as we described before. And there's definitely going to be brain trauma. Yeah, Sonic is going to be experiencing quite a lot of brain trauma, and this is because the rapid acceleration could result in the brain hitting the back of the skull, and hitting the front of the skull, both sides of the skull. This could lead to concussions, contusions, or even diffuse axonal injuries with potentially life-threatening consequences. Death, basically. And then there's definitely, as I've explained before, the cardiovascular strains, because the extreme G-force would definitely disrupt blood circulation, setting your blood all the way down to your feet and none to your head, which would lead to cardiovascular issues such as decreased blood flow to vital organs, irregular heart rhythms, or even a cardiac arrest. Yeah, just imagine going through Green Hill Zone or chemical plant, and then Sonic just dies of a heart attack in the second zone. You better step up your game, Sonic. Mario made it past a few worlds. And then obviously there is the final one, which is my biggest concern for Sonic, which is the loss of consciousness. Have you ever thought about it? The intense forces could cause a person to literally lose consciousness or black out. This will put them at risk of further injury due to the inability to protect themselves or brace for impact, all because they didn't get the oxygen from the blood, because all the blood was sent down and none of it reached the brain. Therefore, it can be said that Sonic, through all his adventures from the very start of his first game, Sonic the Hedgehog 1, all the way to his last game so far, Sonic Frontiers, breaks the fundamental laws of physics by passing each zone with the speeds that he does, unscathed and unharmed. If the laws of physics and gravity were truly applied in a realistic way in this video game / simulation, it would uncover the true horrors and gore that lie within the Sonic universe. And you thought Eggman draining the life force out of animals and infusing them into robots is disturbing. Just wait till you see Sonic shattering his femur and snapping his neck due to whiplash. Sonic wouldn't be able to even reach Studiopolis Zone. But he might have to pay a visit to Rehabilitationopolis Zone for intense recovery. So as always, thanks for watching. Alright, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a great time making this video. And I'm really sorry for the jarring microphone change that happened during the transition phase from calculating the centripetal force to calculating the amount of G-force Sonic experiences. I think the main issue that came up was just the fact that I did not have a microphone, and I had to use my phone's microphone for the majority of it. And only after getting a microphone, I was able to record the earlier sections with more crisp audio. But from now on, you should be expecting like crisp audio from me, like the beginning of the video. So it will be great if you liked and you subscribed, and you would wait to see more of these kinds of videos. What can I say? Bye bye.